Today we're looking at the Great Contract Chop, which is all about the Trump administration's massive review with federal contracts, which will impact thousands of jobs. Plus, we have some serious staffing cuts at the Department of Homeland Security. How will all of this affect you? Let's get into it. A few months ago, the Trump administration launched a massive project to review thousands of federal contracts. Over 20,000 to be exact, and these are deals with private companies to build immigration centers or to help veterans get their benefits, to help build the infrastructure around that. The goal here is to slash costs, to reduce government spending, make sure taxpayer dollars are going in the right direction. Now, so far, we've cut 3,000 contracts to the tune of $3 billion as of May 11th. They're claiming massive savings like $43 million from a contract for protecting private info in the federal insurance marketplace, $14 million from Veterans Affairs healthcare support, and $16 million for disaster relief in Texas after Hurricane Beryl. Oh, and if you go to doge.gov, the website, there's a page on there called Wall of Receipts. They claim they saved $32 billion from contract terminations and $175 billion government-wide. That's impressive, right? But hold up, because some of this information might not be completely accurate. For example, they listed a $1.3 billion contract with a company called Deployed Resources as canceled. That contract was supposed to go to build an immigration processing center. But if you talk to the Department of Army, they say it's still happening. So what's going on? Is this miscommunication or is Doge padding their numbers? This is a chart that shows the consulting contracts that will be under review. The most money is attached to HHS, then DHS, and then the Army. If you don't know, the Washington, D.C. area, which is called DMV for D.C., Maryland, Virginia, this is the consulting capital of the world. You have companies here that employ tens of thousands of individuals to support the government. Really, they're doing functions that the government used to do, but they don't do them any longer. So this review of thousands of contracts, it's going to hit this industry like a massive wrecking ball. Since the Trump administration started, nearly 3,600 people in the DC area have been laid off from consulting companies. And the big players like Deloitte, they're bracing for cuts right now. There's some estimates that say once the dust settles, once all of this is behind us, we would have witnessed up to 100,000 job cuts in the consulting industry. When it comes to the review, we have Booz Allen Hamilton in first place, followed by Science Applications and General Dynamics. The government is going to force contractors into a race to the bottom, says Stan Soloway. That's coming from a fellow who used to oversee procurement for the Pentagon. So what's going to end up happening is one or two things. You're either going to get shoddy work or you're going to have less workers. But a lot of people think it'll be a combination of the two. Poor work and less workers. Now, we all know that there's some defense contractors out there that charge entirely too much money. And you see the news articles where they're charging thousands of dollars for a little baggie of screws. They're trying to charge enormous amounts. But not every company is like that. So to imagine how this would hit, imagine yourself as running a consulting company. Or imagine yourself running a company that does renovations for kitchens, let's say. So you go in there, you replace the kitchen cabinet, maybe you put in a new stovetop, whatever the case is. If you're hired for a job and then the owner tells you, you need to reduce costs by half, or you're getting fired, or we're going to cut the contract. What is that going to do from your perspective? You're going to use cheaper materials. You're going to use less workers. Maybe it'll just be you in there turning the wrench or whatever the case may be. What ends up happening, there's a serious consequence when you lower the price too much. The service or product doesn't usually hold up. So why is the Trump administration going after contractors? Because it's part of his brand at this point. He's the drain the swamp guy. And if there's contractors that are using taxpayer dollars in the DC area, well, congratulations. You have now placed yourself in the category of the swamp. So this is something that he was campaigning on, making the government more efficient. He's going to continue with these efforts. And for decades, the government has been relying more and more on contractors. Take it back to the 1990s, where President Bill Clinton, he was praised for reducing the federal government. He ended up shrinking it quite a bit due to attrition. Largely it was attrition. Some of it was VSIP, some of it was buyouts, but a lot of it was attrition. And what did they realize? Once they shrunk the government down, they exposed a lot of gaps. Gaps where they needed workers. Well, they couldn't hire a federal worker, so what does that leave you with? You have to hire the contractor. You bring the contractor in. You pay more money, so there's really no savings. Also, contractors are a lot easier to fire. So that's a perfect target. It's low-hanging fruit. Just like the federal probationary workers, that was low-hanging fruit. That's what you go ahead and cut first. And a big part of me thinks, really, this is optics. His base loves it when he starts firing people, especially if they're affiliated with the government, especially when taxpayer dollars are involved. So they have this grudge against the federal government, against federal workers, and by extension, perhaps towards government contractors. And they feel like they've been slighted, they feel like they've been wrong. And President Trump, he's the guy who's going to champion their cause. He's the guy that's going to tilt the scales of justice, and everybody is happy. But they're not just cutting, they're renegotiating. They're renegotiating contracts, and this is being done, it's really led by GSA, the General Service Administration. They are targeting anything that's non-essential. Things like reports, research, or coaching. Basically anything that doesn't build a bridge or save a life. Now I'm exaggerating with that, but you get the idea. Now some of these non-essential contracts, they happen to be very important. Take MEF Associates, a small research firm with about 50 employees. They had a contract to help states improve services for people who receive welfare, dealing with tough issues like domestic violence or mental health. That contract cut in April 2025. So these are not just numbers in a spreadsheet. These are real families that will feel the impact of this action. And there's a group of people that say, hey, listen, you shouldn't have government intervention. Government shouldn't be a part of your life. Well, it's easier to say that when you're not struggling with domestic violence, when you're not struggling with a lot of these issues. Christina says it's against federal business practices to cut a contract midway just to get a better deal. She worked on procurement under President Biden and President Obama. And the Trump administration, they're not doing it this way. Contracting companies, they're a little fearful. They're a little scared. They don't want to push back because they could sue. But if they sue the government, they're risking ever having a contract with the government again. And this isn't just about losing jobs. This affects entire communities. Look at Arlington, Virginia, or Bethesda in Maryland. The coffee shops, the restaurants, the dry cleaners. Everyone takes a hit. If there's less defense contractors, less government contractors, and by extension also less federal workers, who do you think is going to be hit the hardest by this? Really, it's going to hit these small businesses really hard. It's a ripple effect. Now, the Trump team is saying these reviews, these cuts, they're not going to cut essential services. GSA says they're just finding partners who take the deficit seriously. And the VA is saying they're only cutting contracts that do not directly benefit the veterans. But the problem with all this is what is essential to one person could be life-changing to another person. Let's look at a couple examples. You have a $155 million contract to build a system to prevent veteran suicide. That was flagged for review. Another $130 million contract was to help veterans transition into a civilian life in order to find another job. That was flagged for review. Who decides if it's worth it? Maybe it gets sent over to the chopping block. Now let's pivot to another big story, the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. A few months ago, the Trump administration announced plans to slash the staffing at 3 oversight offices in the DHS. The Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, the Office of Immigration Detention Ombudsman, and the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. These offices are like the referees inside the Department of Homeland Security. They're making sure immigrants, they're making sure U.S. citizens, they're not getting trampled across when they're going through this system. Let's look at the damage. The CIS Ombudsman, which helps people navigate immigration issues, it's going from 40 employees to just 5 to 7. The Immigration Detention Ombudsman, which checks on conditions in detention centers, it's dropping from nearly 100 employees to 5 to 7. And the Civil Rights and Civil Liberty Office, that's going from 140 to just 21. That's not just a trim, that's like a skeleton crew that's remaining. Now DHS, they're saying that these offices were a roadblock when it comes to immigration enforcement. But these offices are claiming they're not trying to be an obstacle. They don't have the intention to be a roadblock. They just want to make sure that humans are treated humanely. And without them there, who's providing the oversight? These cuts could mean more mistakes, more abuses, and less accountability. In addition to this, we have some bills going through Congress right now. It's going to happen all throughout the summer months. There's 5 bills. Some of them might get passed. Others, it doesn't look very likely. Either way, if you're a federal employee or you know a federal worker, this is very important for them to understand. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.